It's hard to forget that moment from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull where Indy survives a nuclear explosion by camping inside of a refrigerator. The development team over at CD Projekt Red certainly remembers that scene, as they programmed a reference displaying what would actually happen if you attempted that stunt at home. Spoiler alert, you shouldn't. At least they give you an Indiana Jones inspired jacket as a reward for visiting the wreckage. Cyberpunk 2077 has been met with both critical acclaim and scrutiny. While there is a lot to be said about the state of the game when released, that is not what we are here to discuss today. Instead, we're going to focus on all the world building details that CD Projekt Red packed into their game. From television to film, the game covers and parodies many characters, plot points, and gags featured in other media for V to discover as they travel from the Badlands to Night City and everywhere in between. The video game is based off of a tabletop RPG, Cyberpunk 2013, and that was heavily inspired by the works of Philip K. Dick with his Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the film that spawned from that novel, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. These were all a part of a literary movement known as cyberpunk, a genre that typically revolved around an alienated individual in a dystopic future whose daily life was influenced by technology advances and body modifications. This influence is seen all around Night City, whether it's through the overuse of cyberware and body mods in the general population, or how the corpos are constantly monitoring the citizens. Beyond Blade Runner's literate roots, the entire city is a love letter to the world crafted by Blade Runner concept artist Sid Mead. In Night City, the entire world is vertical. Natural light is sparse and the skyscrapers tower over you. They cast a shadow that is only illuminated by the neon of the massive billboards. Featured in this Blade Runner inspired city are references to the films themselves. In the side mission, I Walk the Line, there is a man solemnly sitting in his underwear on a roof with nothing but a pigeon in hand.
What's this?
You may think that this is just a sad gonk, but rather it's a nod to Roy Beatty in Blade Runner's finale. All these moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain, is the quote that the scene references, which can be found inscribed on a plaque in North Oaks. Several characters follow tropes from the cyberpunk genre, like Misty, who happens to be styled to be a lot like Priz with her raccoon-styled eyeshadow and frizzed-up hair, and V, who like Kay is a detective being forced to come to terms with not being fully human. A moment in the game has you completing the Voight-Kampff test, this test originating in Blade Runner to see if the individual was a human or replicant. I'm sure you know by now that Keanu Reeves is in the game. He was in all the marketing, presented the game at press conferences, and the studio even used his motorcycle company as the basis for the biking mechanics. Of course the game was going to reference some of Keanu's acting portfolio. After the game's prologue, a shady man in a trench coat shows up offering you two choices. That is the choice between a red pill and a blue pill. One pill suppresses Johnny Silverhand's presence, while the other expedites his process in taking over your brain. This is obviously a direct callback to the choice that Morpheus gave Neo in The Matrix. The game seems to have taken the red pill as the Matrix presence is all around. The advertising in Night City features an ad which parodies
guns. Lots of guns.
The nomad life path featured in the game is a little more than a wink and a nod to the aesthetic of Mad Max. Between the desert's landscape, scavenged clothing, and crazies found around, it's almost as if you're just playing Mad Max the video game. Within the Badlands, there are plenty of nods to the franchise. There's a custom Quadra Type 66 belonging to the Wraiths, which was made in celebration of Fury Road's 5th anniversary. Perhaps the largest reference is of the War Rig from Fury Road.
Once again, we send off my war rig to bring back gasoline.
Surrounding the vehicles are bodies containing elements integral to the characters from the film, like Furiosa and Immortan Joe. Found on one of the bodies is a data shard which contains a grim turn of events from the film where Max is injured and the pregnant females are dead. Another cyberpunk-themed staple is the series Ghost in the Shell. The game pays respect to the series in several ways. A cyber psycho that you can fight is named Lieutenant Mower. Lieutenant Mower happens to be a part of a special unit, donning a visor, forcing you to fight outside of a flooded apartment complex, which is exactly what happens in the film. The game's resident braindance expert, Judy Alvarez, seems to be a fan of the series as well. She sports a not-so-subtle tattoo containing a literal ghost inside of a shell, as well as that being her call display icon. Of course, the game that features half robot, half human citizens ends up having some references to the Terminator franchise. One of the game's earliest encounters is with a man half human, half cyborg, who dons a leather jacket and a shotgun. I'm sure we don't need to tell you who that's supposed to be. Beyond that is another Easter egg found within the canals. You can find a dead robot, dead human, motorcycle, and tanker truck that is meant to show a grim alternate take from the classic scene from Terminator 2, Judgment Day. If you pick up the data shard found on one of the bodies, the film is fully referenced with an Arnold name drop as well as a basic plot of the film being described.
I won't be back.
Night City is host to a whole assortment of drugs. In popular media, there seems to be only one man who can make a product so pure and so blue that he owns the market, that being Heisenberg. In season 4 of Breaking Bad, the super lab set up by Gus Fring is destroyed. This moment of the series inspired the entire gig in Cyberpunk titled The Heisenberg Principle, which tasks V with destroying a glitter lab.
Pizza time.
Another Breaking Bad reference happens to be an extra large pepperoni pizza that you can find yeeted on a roof. Thankfully, Skylar isn't in this game to yell at you after that. Finally, in the Badlands, you could spot an RV being used to cook up a blue drug. A callback to the easier days in Walt and Jesse's life. For the last decade, The Office has seemingly been everywhere. If the game is to be believed, it's not going anywhere for another half century. In the side gig Big in Japan, you are tasked with bringing a man from point A to point B. If you keep him alive and deliver him to the client, you get greeted with a post-mission conversation where the man inside the trunk reveals himself to be a doctor with steady hands who accidentally murdered a mob boss. This sets up the exact same dialogue as a moment from The Office Season 6.
I could touch it. So pissed.
Season 1 of The Office creates a fake disease, that being spontaneous dental hydroplosion, which happens to be a very real disease in the cyberpunk world, as per a datashard report. Well, you seen him in Fortnite, of course John Wick is going to be referenced here. The Unity pistol in-game has a rather unique reload animation, that being the exact same choreography used by John Wick when he reloads his pistol. Beyond that, John himself seems to be active in 2077.
You're not very good at retiring.
I'm working on it.
In the Olive Branch gig, you meet a client who is delivering a certain hitman's car. The hitman in question is described to assassinate with a dog, known for his long hair and beard. The only difference? This one is not breathtaking. One of Night City's most useful Easter eggs happens to be revolving around one of DC's finest. In a cave near the Badlands, you can find a Rayfield Caliburn that becomes yours once you enter it. Beyond being the fastest car in the game, it's also Cyberpunk's equivalent to the Batmobile.
Does it come in black?
If you read the data shard found in the shipping container, you find out about Mercman, an individual with a backstory we've heard way too many times. Where are my fellow Canadian viewers at? As we were hunkering down for a frozen winter outside, we get to meet some Canadian legends in-game. Unfortunately, no, that is not Wayne Gretzky. Rather, it's the Trailer Park Boys. Outside of the game's prison, you meet a trio named Josh, Rick, and Brandon, who closely resemble Julian, Ricky, and Bubbles from the television-turned-film series. If you overhear their conversation, fans of the series will be delighted to hear about how Josh read a book that changed his outlook on jails, a moment which Julian has in the series. The location of the Easter egg is also suspect, as the current iteration of the series is taking place in jail. Possibly everyone's favorite cyberpunk-themed vehicle is a motorbike that Shotaro Kaneda whips around in Akira. Fortunately for us, the bike is purchasable and is actually one of the most reasonable prices for a vehicle in-game. Being only 22,000 eddies, picking up this bike is pretty important, as the car mechanics swerve around more than plot points in a manga. To find it, just look for the vehicle available for purchase under the name Yaba Kusanagi, which yes, also happens to be a reference to the protagonist from Ghost in the Shell. Too much sci-fi for your nomad playstyle? How about a country classic vehicle themed after the General Lee from Dukes of Hazzard? The Gen Rowley is a cleverly named variant of the Quadra Type 66 that will have you stunting around the Badlands until the sun comes up. The game has Keanu Reeves saying many interesting lines.
Just eat the free pizza and then we're out of here, okay?
In honor of the other Johnny with the questionable sanity, we have a classic use of "Here's Johnny" used in game. If you know anything about the Overlook Hotel, it's that under no circumstance should you ever visit room 237. That is, unless you want to be greeted with a naked ghoul in the bathtub. Cyberpunk's version of this, room 1237, greets you once again with a naked woman inside of a bathtub. How about we no longer go into rooms marked 237? Finally, we have to have a look at the game's photo mode, which allows your V to pose like just about every single pop culture figure from the last 50 years. We've got Joker's stare dance, Sailor Moon's hand movements, Han Solo's classic blaster pose, Pulp Fiction's diner robbery gunpoint, James Bond's iconic stance, Neo's kung fu hands.
Perfect.
With an upcoming free expansion set to release early this year, we can only imagine what is still to be in store for Night City. While the game cleverly mentions many Keanu flicks, we are shocked at the lack of Bill and Ted Easter eggs in the game. Perhaps it's only a matter of time until we can explore Night City inside of a telephone booth with our buddy Death.